Struggling to keep customers coming back? Wondering how to turn retention into real revenue? Whether you are just starting out or a seasoned business pro, join us to explore AI-driven innovations, churn prevention strategies, and customer success tactics that actually work. Welcome to Retain and Gain. Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Retain and Gain, a customer success podcast. I am your host, Michaela, and today we'll dive deep into everyone's favorite topic, revenue. We have a perfect guest just for that, Edra, a revenue architect and the mastermind behind the viral Customer Success 5.0 framework. She helped countless businesses design high-impact revenue strategies, and today she's sharing her expertise with us. Welcome, Edra.
Thank you very much, Michaela. I'm so excited to be here. So excited.
We are so happy to have you. So, Edra, you have such an impressive experience. You were literally right into the official birth of customer success in Salesforce. So, tell me a little bit about it. Tell me what still motivates you in this industry.
No, it's interesting. Edra Williams. I am currently Chief Customer Officer for a company called DeepHow, and just loving every minute of it. And you're right. I started my customer success journey at Salesforce, which a lot of people assume is the progenitor of customer success. It actually is not. When I started with Salesforce, it was actually called Customers for Life. And then it pivoted to customer success. So we did not necessarily create it, but I think that we perfected it and refined it. And one of the things I loved about it and what keeps me passionate is it's always about customer centricity. But at the end of the day, the reason why most SaaS companies in particular stand up a customer success function is because it's all about revenue growth. Because as you know, and everyone has heard this statement, 80% of our revenue usually comes from 20% of our customers. And those are existing customers. So you have to have an organization like customer success to expand that revenue growth so that you can retain those customers and continue to grow that revenue. So that's what keeps me in it. And that's what I'm really passionate about.
Oh, absolutely. And it's such a hot topic right now. Everyone is talking whether customer success is a new revenue engine. And when I was checking your LinkedIn, you do this Metric Monday series, and your post about Fab 5 for 2025 framework went viral. So can you tell us a little bit about it? Because it's, again, all about revenue.
Yeah, no, and it's funny because I'm doing my Monday metrics call with my team later on this afternoon. So it's something that I've consistently done with my last few companies where we really sit down and we really open up our CRM system and we take a look at what the team is doing from a revenue perspective. So what I've been doing for the last 2 years is looking at where we need to focus from a customer success standpoint. And last year I did the Fab 5 for 20, I'm sorry, Fab 4 for 2024. So this year it's the Fab 5 for 2025. And I kind of want to break each one of those down and then we can dive into it if that's okay.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Go ahead. Let's talk about each point a little bit.
I love it. Okay, so the first one is really what we call Fab number 1. And it's all about customer-led revenue growth. You hear a lot about product-led revenue growth, and that's one way, and it really plays very well together. But customer-led revenue growth really focuses on customer success qualified leads and making sure that we're retaining those customers, and then growing the customer, being customer-centric, so that when you're expanding and growing that revenue, you're driving value for that customer. So Fab 1 is definitely customer-led revenue growth. Fab 2 is cross-functional collaboration from a go-to-market strategy. You called me a revenue architect. I recently became certified in revenue architecture. And what that looks at is it moves away from that funnel that we traditionally look at where you've got marketing at the top and then you've got sales and then you maybe have customer success. What you want to do when you have a cross-functional alignment for a go-to-market standpoint is making sure that everyone in your organization is laser focused on revenue growth. So it's not just about marketing, generating leads, but it goes all the way through from sales to customer success support and all the way through to product. And it creates sort of what we consider an infinity loop. So that go-to-market strategy is a cross-functional collaboration strategy. So that's Fab 5.2. Fab 5.3 is what everybody's talking about, and you cannot get away from it. It's AI-driven personalization.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. ChatGPT and I are best friends right now. We have conversations all the time. But one of the things that you have to really make sure that you're doing is you're still focusing on the customer, but you're using AI to personalize that customer journey so that you can derive the right revenue opportunities for the right customers at the right time. So Fab 3 for 2025 is definitely AI-driven personalization. And then Fab 4 is the thing that I think is most critical for us as customer success leaders, and why I just became certified in revenue architecture. It's really all around revenue centric metrics. And that's so that you can engage the C suite. Because I think the biggest challenge for customer success leaders has been in the past is we don't talk about revenue enough. And more importantly, we've had a difficult time talking about revenue with the C suite. So, what I do in the Fab Five for number 4 is making sure that key metrics resonate with the C suite. And there's really 4 metrics that I like to focus on. First and foremost is customer lifetime value. And as a revenue architect, I feel really comfortable having that conversation right now. Who are our most profitable customers and who are the
Mm-hmm.
customers we should be focusing on? Time to value, which is something that's critical for the customer. When I did that viral post, people kept coming back to me saying, where are you talking about the customer? Well, that's all about time to value. And that's driven from the customer. When they define what value is for them, as customer success leaders, we make sure that our team is reaching that value in as quick amount of time as possible. And then that third metric from a revenue standpoint is cost to serve. What does it truly cost us to serve our customer, which goes back to who are the most profitable customers? And the last one is average revenue per CSM. So how much revenue are our CSMs actually deriving from the existing customer? So Fab 4 is revenue centric metrics for C-suite engagement. And then the final one, and this one is the one that you don't see a lot, but I think it's very critical for what we do. Fab 5 is elevating the employee experience. This is one of the best jobs in the world, but it's also one of the most difficult jobs in the world. So using that as a metric to ensure that we retain our top talent and we grow our top talent, because when we do that, we actually have better experiences for our customers. So that's the Fab 5. First and foremost, customer-led revenue growth. Fab 2 is cross-functional collaboration for the go-to-market customer success. And then Fab 3 is AI-driven personalization. And then Fab 4 is revenue-centric metrics for the C-suite. And then Fab 5 is elevating the employee experience. So I've covered them at a very high level. So how would you like to proceed? And I'm happy to engage on each point or particular one that you'd like to focus on.
Yeah, so before we circle back to the first point, I am so intrigued by this revenue architecture. And you said that you just recently got certified. So, like, tell me more about that. How can somebody get certified as revenue architect, or what do you even do? Like, it's so intriguing. You're the first person I ever met that is a revenue architect.
No, I actually have the certification to prove it, and I think that I should be getting compensated, but it's actually by an organization called Winning by Design. So you can go to their site, and they do have a certification program. It's 2 weeks, and the thing that I love about it is first and foremost, you really deep dive into each of those metrics that I'm talking about. You learn how to calculate customer lifetime value. You understand cost to serve. So each of those metrics that I sort of highlight, particularly for the C-suite, that's part of the revenue architecture, and they give you tools and guidance on how to do that. But then when I also talked about that go-to-market strategy, traditionally in customer success, we've seen that sort of funnel model where, as I mentioned, you've got marketing creating those leads, and then
Yeah.
they hand those leads off to sales, and then it goes to customer success, and it kind of stops there. But what the revenue architecture function does is it creates what they call this bow tie, which is very similar to an infinity loop. And it means that just because the marketing team creates that lead and they do that handoff, it really is an infinity process. So that marketing lead, it funnels down to customer success. But then that particular customer, when we engage them, we can go back to marketing and start building out some nurturing and some journeys for those particular customers. So it doesn't just stop with that initial lead. Every single functional organization within a company, product, support, customer success, they all should be laser focused on that customer from a go-to-market strategy. So it's not just top down, it's more of an infinity, or what they call a bow tie. So that's what the revenue architecture certification teaches you to do. And I've already started to implement it in my new role as a chief customer officer at DeepHow.
Oh, that's super interesting. I have to look into that. And, as you mentioned, that 80-20 rule that usually 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of your architects,
Yes.
I think that there are still a lot of companies that think about customer success or are even trying to build a customer success, but they still see it more of a support function. Like a lot of people, like when they hear customer success, they're like, oh, that's just a new name for customer support.
Yep.
Or what do they even do? Like they have no idea. So I would maybe like to know how you think that companies or leaders should kind of change their mindset, or how should they start if they are not yet in that position where customer success is driving revenue, but they want to get there.
Oh, that's such an excellent question. And it's again, when you ask me what motivates you, it's that's one of the things that keeps me talking about this topic and why I sort of started my fabs for each year. If you notice, I didn't really talk a lot about the support aspect, and that's a critical part. I manage a support team here, and they do valuable work, but a lot of what they do is reactive. However,
Mhm.
what we are shifting them to do, and we're excited about it, we're about to implement this, they can be revenue drivers as well, because you think about that, they're sort of the first line of defense for your customers. Once you
Oh, yeah.
attain them, they're working with you at a level where they get a lot of customer insight, and they can actually create what they consider support leads. Just like customer success can create those customer success qualified leads, our support team can do that as well. But to your question about why so many leaders don't necessarily see customer success as a revenue driver, it is because there is that perception that we are reactionary. And in actuality, we are, because we're the voice of the customer, can be very proactive. And we can be proactive first and foremost in making sure we're driving value for our customer. And I keep coming back to that because that is critical. But when we drive that value, it allows us to uncover expansion opportunities, or what we call customer success qualified leads. So,
Definitely.
yes, and in doing that, those are that 80-20 rule, those leads tend to have what statistically, and I may get the statistic wrong, between a 60 to 80% higher conversion rate than a marketing qualified lead. Also, the cost to serve those leads is lower because you're already working with the customer you own currently, as opposed to net new customers. So what leaders need to do is shift the mindset from thinking that all of their revenue needs to come from net new, or just having their sales team focus on new revenue as well as existing revenue. Let the customer success team identify those qualified leads, because again, the cost to serve them is lower and the return on those and conversion rate is higher. Then that's a revenue driver. So we're not just traditionally cost of goods sold is where we used to sit. Now we can own a P&L, which is very critical.
And it's like business one-on-one when they always tell you, oh, the acquisition cost is the highest cost. So you should try to, like find other streams of revenue so you don't have to spend all of the money on acquisition.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you about how do you define like customer success qualified lead, but you explained that perfectly. But what do you do in the situation when, okay, there is a customer success department, right? But they are more of, I don't want to even say like key account role, because like key account is still sales, but they are more in that just value driving role. They don't have necessarily KPI related to revenue, or they are not really bound to any like financial KPIs. How would you change that, or what would your advice be?
Yeah, I've done that in my last two companies, and it's been interesting because, on the one hand, again, you talked about it earlier. I've been doing this for a while, almost 20 years. And when I started in the role, one of the things I first said to my manager at the time was, I think one of the drivers we're going to have is identifying qualified leads. And at the time, my manager said, nope, that's not your job. Your job is really focusing on making sure the customer adopts and they utilize. And that was what I call customer success 1.0. It was really, we bought the tool and just making sure they used it. But what happened in that paradigm was customers were churning because they weren't getting value. So then we moved to that. Let's look at sentiment and talk about NPS scores and CSAT. And again, you can have a high CSAT or a high NPS scores, and customers were still churning. So what I figured out is, when I moved into 5.0, and I had teams that were still in that customer success 1.0 or customer success 2.0, they were still doing the value realization, they were still doing the C stats and the sentiments, but they weren't driving revenue. So I sat down with all of my team and I said, we have a revenue number, because that's something that I just, if I'm going to be in this role, I have to have a revenue number, and I do. And then I'm saying, in order for us to achieve that revenue goal, we're going to have to move from customer success 1.0 and 4.0 into customer success 5.0, where every single interaction we have with our customer, we are going to drive value. But if there is an opportunity, a qualified opportunity that we can uncover, we're going to hand that off to sales and let them close that opportunity. And it can be done. You do have some customers where there may not be a revenue opportunity. That's rare. But like I said, that 80-20 rule, that 20% of your customers where you can derive additional expansion revenue, you just have to train your team to identify it. And quite frankly, once you train them to do that, they love it because they're having their conversations with their customers, and it's very easy for them to do.
Yeah, my other question was that if you hand those qualified leads to sales or if you're trying to close them yourself, because I think that that's a fear of a lot of leaders is that the customer success specialist or customer success manager is supposed to be like your trusted advisor.
Yes.
Like you are not necessarily as a customer supposed to feel that pressure like, oh, buy
Yes.
more. I have this great new feature. I have this great new product. Buy more seats or whatever. But yeah, if you hand it to sales, I think that that trusted advisor feeling still stays, right?
You are spot on. And I'm so glad you make that distinction because that is a fear of a lot of the leaders to a certain degree is how do you have customer success selling as well as sales selling? And what I try to do at my organizations is there's a clear delineation. So you notice I said we actually have a process right now that we've just sort of implemented where we put the leads into our CRM system, and then it's automatically handed off to whatever account executive owns that account. And then
Okay.
that makes sure that we're not selling to our customer. But what we will do is, for example, we do what's called customer objective reviews, which is very similar to a QBR. I don't do QBRs. Customers don't like them. They don't necessarily drive value. But a customer objective review just does just that. It focuses on the objectives of the customer. So in our core review, if we're going through the customer's roadmaps or we're talking to them about what their value drivers are, we're able to uncover those qualified leads because we're having that conversation with the customer, and because we're talking to them about their values and their KPIs. It is a qualified lead because we know that it's something that they're interested in. And if they say to a CSM, I'm thinking about adding additional licenses or seats, or I'm thinking about expanding into a different market or sector, that is a cue that they want something else or they need something
Yeah.
else. Okay, so that's qualified. And then what we do is hand it off. Hopefully, our account executives on that call with us if we're lucky. And we just hand that off to them and they close it. However, I will say in some organizations, particularly for your smaller startups, where the CSMs are wearing that account management as well as CSM hat, they may be closing those deals as well, and they may be compensated for that. But in the ideal world, there is that delineation between who's handling what we call the commercials, who's actually closing that deal versus who's identifying that opportunity. I hope that made sense. And
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because when we talk about sales and customer success, I think that there are two very distinctive personalities that come into play when you talk about those two roles, right? Because you need a little bit of aggressive, ambitious people to be in sales. And then in customer success, you need those like builders, you need those like relationship connectors. Um, is that right?
spell that a little bit because we have quite a few salespeople that have come over to the fold in customer success. I don't think it's so much about personalities. I think that as part of the go-to-market strategy, when I say there has to be a clear delineation in between who's sort of identifying that opportunity and who's closing that opportunity, I see that as a sort of a clear demarcation. But who's building that relationship, who's having those interactions, that go-to-market strategy means you lead as one. So the customer never says, oh, this is the person who sells me something. This is the person who identifies the opportunity. It's this is my go-to-market team for success. This is the team that helps me be successful. And it doesn't matter to the customer who gets them that product or service that they need. True, we do want to be the trusted advisor. We do want to have a strategic role, but we can both be aggressive, and we can both be farmers and hunters in the same way. So I don't want to think that it's just about different personalities. It's more about one of us has chosen a path where we're really being a little bit more direct with the customer about what we're selling, and the other is where we're identifying opportunities based on the customer's specific needs. And but we both play nice in the sandbox together, I hope.
I love that perspective. And that kind of gets us to the point five of your framework when you talk about how customer experience or motivation to do the job in general influences the experience of the customer. So, can you tell me a little bit more about that and like what's your opinion or vision for this point five?
One of the things that I've done in my previous roles is, and I haven't seen this very much for some of my peers, so I'm hoping that they'll start doing this. This is, as I said earlier, one of the best jobs you can possibly have. However, it is one of the most challenging because we're not necessarily perceived as who we really are. Your point when you said earlier about sometimes being perceived as support, and again, I have a support team and we're all under the same umbrella. But there is a delineation between customer success and support in most organizations, not all. But one thing that is critical across whatever my team implementation, my customer success, or my support team is that we need to make sure that the people that are in these roles are taken care of. So, first and foremost, there needs to be clarity around our roles. And again, this has come up several times during our conversation, but to me, one of the biggest challenge for customer success leaders is to make sure that everyone within the customer success organization individually knows what their roles are. And then more importantly, that communication of role definition proliferates throughout the organization. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is that our people are taken care of from the perspective is we create a clear path for them. This is another role where there isn't a lot of clarity around what your next steps are. There's a lot of
Mhm.
titles, but not everyone understands what it is always to go from that next role. How do you get your next promotion, or how do you learn and grow in the role? And then more importantly, what our KPIs are. And you defined that earlier. So for me, the fifth and most important Fab Five is enhancing that employee experience. And what that does is when my success team understands what their roles are, what they understand their definitions and KPIs are, and more importantly, when everyone in the organization understands all of that as well, they are able to go to market with the customer and they're happier. I'm able to retain those people a lot better, and they're able to grow in their career, which ultimately enhances the employee experience and enhances the customer experience. So that's why I consider it one of the most important fabs of my Fab Five.
And how do you usually go about spreading that awareness within the organization? Because usually, I think the problem is not that people don't know what their job role is or what their KPIs are, but a lot of times it's those other departments that just look at customer success as this big mysterious bubble, and they're just confused. So how do you go about that?
I say three things: communicate, 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 and you have to do it. One of the things I'm doing right now because I'm new in my role is I'm developing a roadshow, and it's internal and external. Internally, I'm actually getting together in a couple of weeks with my go-to-market team, and I will be sort of providing a definition so that everyone in the organization really has clarity around what my team does, what our KPIs are, and what our metrics are for success. So that's something that I'm doing internally, and I've done it at all my other companies. And then I'm actually going on the road. I was actually on a call late last night with APAC, talking to one of our top customers in that region to really help them understand. Now that I've come into this role, this is how the team will be defined, and more importantly, what they wanted to make sure is, are we going to be able to take care of them as a customer? So communicate, communicate, and communicate. Make sure everything's defined. And it's not a one and done because in addition to doing Monday metrics with my team, one of the things I do is what's called Friday Fabulous. And it's where internally the team meets and we talk about what we're doing, but we also proliferate that information out to the company as a whole so they see what we're doing on a regular basis as well. So again, communicate, communicate, communicate.
Oh, that definitely sounds like a great strategy. And when you look at it, this is the internal part, right?
Mhm.
And what do you do like externally? So from the client's facing perspective, you said that your ideal scenario is that customers perceive you as like, this is my success team. This is the people I go to when I need something, and I don't necessarily differentiate. This is product, this is sales, etc. So how do you make sure that that team really is perceived as one versus like these various teams that they need to contact for different things?
No, it's funny because part of the one of the the slides in my roadshow for customer success. It's our go-to-market strategy. It really defines the team. And it doesn't just define my customer success team, but it also defines the roles on the what we call the moments that matter. So every single moment that matters on the customer journey is owned by a team. So when I talked earlier about that lead gen or the marketing campaigns or even events, because we're doing quite a few events right now because it's event season for everybody, that's all owned by marketing. But customer success has a play in that. So my customer, if they want to know what events we're going to be at, then they will go to their customer success manager. But my customer success manager is working with our marketing team. Or from a product standpoint, my customers really want to know about enhancements requests. Well, once a month, we internally talk about that. But then when we have those customer objective reviews that I talked about, we make sure that product is involved in that. So the customer gets that and the product team gets that voice of the customer feedback. But we define all of that so that when we talk to our customers, we say, you know what, there's this whole infrastructure that is here to serve you as a customer. Here's what each respective cross-functional team, because remember I talked about that as one of my Fab
Yeah.
Five, what that cross-functional team, here's what they do. But ultimately, if you need something, come to either your account exec or your customer success manager, and we'll get it all taken care of for you. But we make sure that our customers understand what those roles are at the end of the day. So there's not a lack of clarity around who does what.
So would you say that it's like the director of customer success or customer success executive who should proactively drive that collaboration and maybe like try to
Yes.
set it up and arrange it?
Yes, yes. And I say that because again, we have to define ourselves, otherwise others will define it for us, and they tend not to define us. Not always, but generally, we said that earlier. In not necessarily there's not always clarity. So from my perspective, every single time I've gone to a new company, I've sat down with the leadership and I said, "What type of customer experience are you trying to create?" And then once they've given me that, then I know what my KPIs are because I've given a revenue target, like I said. And then I sit down with all the go-to-market leaders, my CRO, my VP, or my CMO, all those leaders, and say, this is where each moment that matter happens. This is who owns that moment that matters. And then this is where customer success fits into that overall customer journey. So it really is the onus is upon us. And this is something that we as customer success leaders have to do a better job of, because otherwise others will define our role for us. And they don't always do a very good job of it. They try though.
Well, better trying than not doing anything,
This,
right?
this is true. This is true.
Well, thank you very much for explaining. Is there anything else that we didn't cover in the framework that you would like to touch base upon?
The only one that I would really, really hone in, because we talked about the customer-led growth, we've talked about the cross-functional collaboration and the employee experience. The other thing again, and I don't want to reiterate it, but I think it's important, is as CS leaders, we have got to do a better job about those revenue metrics that are really resonating with the C-suite. Until we are comfortable having those conversations from a revenue architecture standpoint, we will it will be difficult going forward for us to really resonate with the executives as to who we are and what we truly do, and more importantly, the value that we can bring to an organization. So again, being laser focused on that revenue centricity is critical. And an organization like Retain and Grow, I love the fact that that's what you focus on.
Thank you. Yeah. And if there is a new leader, because like a lot of times people know about revenue, they are proficient in sales. But when it comes to customer success, when there is a new leader or a leader that is building a customer success organization, what would you recommend? Where should they go for guidance or for resources?
Oh my goodness. Well, I mean, obviously an organization like yourself, but that's the beauty of our community. Customer success has so many resources. I can't.
I would agree.
Yeah, I would be disserving myself by trying to name all of them because a lot of them are people that I know personally and in the industry. What I would recommend is going to LinkedIn as a primary resource and then joining a customer success community. Because what I have found is if I am ever in a situation where I don't have the answer to a particular question, my community really services me in that way. So I would say find a community on LinkedIn, particularly one like a Retain and Grow, and then look for thought leaders in those communities because we have a wealth of them and they bring a tremendous amount of knowledge, far superior to mine in many cases. That would be where I would start, quite frankly.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for the advice and thank you for sharing your expertise with us. It was a pleasure having you. And maybe last thing, if any of the listeners wanted to connect with you, where could they find you?
Oh, reach me on LinkedIn. I'm actually doing a series for those of you that are sci-fi fans. I'm a huge Trekkie, and I'm taking all of the Star Trek characters from the original series. Okay, I make that distinction, and I'm doing their archetypes as an analogy to customer success roles. So Sulu, and Captain Kirk, they each play a role in the customer success go-to-market team. So connect with me on LinkedIn. Subscribe to my newsletter because it's all about what I'm calling customer success boldly going into 2025. So from a Star Trek perspective.
Wonderful. Yeah, I am not a huge Star Trek fan, but I've been watching your series, so I'm learning.
That's okay. You don't necessarily have to like the series, but hopefully you like the content.
Oh yeah, I do. I love it.
Great.
Well, thank you so much, Edra. It was a pleasure talking to you again, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you, Mikhail. I appreciate it. Thank you for the time. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. And that's a wrap for this episode of Retain and Gain. Stay tuned for more insights and don't forget to subscribe. Until next time.